Hello, everyone, and welcome to Season 2 of Autism Insights. I'm your host, Bill Locke. Did you know that people on the autism spectrum are 10 times more likely to be homeless? That's according to a recent study which reveals that individuals with autism spectrum disorder make up a significant portion of the population of the homeless. As you listen to our program, just think about that. As a father of a young adult on the spectrum, this information stirs up my heart and should concern us all. For that reason, we want to devote this program to a conversation with Dr. John Rook. John is an Albertan who grew up in poverty with patches on his genes. He now directs a nonprofit organization, Simon House, which is dedicated to helping the homeless. Okay, John, fill me in a little bit about your early life. How did you get started?
Well, I have an interesting background, Bill. I'm a triplet, and the other two, one was stillborn, and one lived 3 days. So I go to the gravesite whenever I'm back in Ontario, and I still feel like a multiple and sort of connected to that. But I have an older sister and two younger brothers, and grew up in Brantford, Ontario, really quite poor. I like to say it this way. We were economically poor, but we were relationally rich. My parents were quite amazing. They met in a church and got married, had my sister, then had the boys after that. And my dad is disabled. He's dead now, but he had polio and left school after grade 8. So he struggled with work and employment, and just a lovely man. The church was mom and dad's life. So I had that as a good background as I started thinking about the world. We couldn't afford books, but they could afford the 5 cents for a library card. So we went every Saturday to the library, my sister and I, and we'd bring home our stack of books. So they knew that we needed that input, and that was the best way they could find to provide it. So growing up in a church family, I think started my thinking about peace and justice and humanity, and how my career happened was because of that. So I was always conscious that my dad couldn't do what other dads could. And, he wasn't able to buy a car or anything like that. I had my first pizza when I was 17. So that tells you how poor we were. But we had a wonderful church, wonderful community, amazing relatives. The thread that runs through my entire life, from my birth right to today, is poverty. So I've been in economic poverty. I understand what it's like to struggle, to be the only kid in the school with patches on my overalls, always clean overalls, but patches. And when I look at where I'm working today, which we can get to, my history and the jobs that I've had, and it's all connected to poverty.
Tell me about Simon House, and I guess how Simon House brings together all these different threads in your life.
People who are homeless, men particularly who are homeless, didn't have place. Place is a really important word for me. Everybody needs place. I would call Simon House not so much place, I would call it experience, but it's connected to place. And it started with very few, about half a dozen men in a house beside a Catholic church. And it's blossomed into this amazing organization. And along the way, it shifted from just housing homeless men to now doing addictions work. If people think like we do about creating welcoming space, then it has to be welcoming for everyone. We're not putting a lock on the door.
So I want to ask you, John, where your upbringing, growing up in scarcity and having an unequal distribution of wealth, comes into justice, whether it's for people who are addicted or homeless, whether they're rich or poor.
I believe nobody should be in poverty in Canada. I've worked in housing with homeless people. I believe housing is a human right, and I believe no one should be denied housing. So I believe that you shouldn't have to earn the right to housing. You should have the right to housing. So governments, for example, and churches can work together to make sure that happens. We should make sure that nobody's on the street. I'm going to go to a homeless encampment in Toronto with my nephew. He goes quite a few nights a week and he feeds people there. I'm so happy that he's doing that, but he shouldn't have to do that. That's living with a scarcity model. And the other thing related to that for me is we've become such an individualized society. So you find those principles that are human principles that have to drive what we do. So we need to stop this selfish world of greed. You know, I'm important. I'm the only one who's important, and start caring for others. If we don't do that, we're doomed.
John, it's a privilege talking to you. Thank you so much for joining us.
It's my pleasure.